Okay, welcome to another Tippling Philosophy video. This is one where I'm just going to have a really casual chat to my friend Andrew Hall, who runs the Naked Diner podcast, amongst other things. And he and I are going to just chat about some stuff, and it may or may not make sense. Hi, Andrew. How are you in pandemic US?
I am doing well at the epicenter of the COVID-19 crisis. Luckily, we have very good leadership over here, as you're well aware of, and we have everything under control.
So I was thinking that the Orange Mussolini, as I sometimes like to call him, is following in Italy's footsteps in a very morbid and not amusing way, in more ways than just Mussolini fascism. But there you go.
Yeah, your viewers should be aware that I'm probably going to lower the intellectual amount of this intellectual conversation, the level, quite a bit. So there should be some kind of warning we do beforehand.
No, there is no lowering. Let's just, if we start at the base and then work our way marginally up to the foothills, and then just stay there, because anywhere further than that is just too much effort.
Oh, I understand. Yeah. So. It's coronavirusville here. My kids aren't going back to school until, I guess, May now.
Right.
And I'm still working because I work with people who have disabilities.
Right.
And that's my day job / night job. That's how I pay my bills when I'm not making people tap online.
And you've had an experience with coronavirus pretty much just now, by all sounds.
Literally, like maybe 2 hours ago. A person that I work with who has a disability probably has it, and I do not have a fever right now. I think I had a panic fever. Have you ever had a panic fever when you think,
No,
oh my God, something?
But I can imagine that kind of psychosomatic sort of dimension there. But the thing about the virus is, of course, when it's during its incubation period or whatever, it's you're asymptomatic, so there's every chance, without wanting to scare you, there's every chance that you might have it, and then the actual symptoms would develop in a few days, right?
What's funny about me is that I have a bit of hypochondria,
Right.
A little bit of tendency. I'm over involved.
I've just fed that evil monster.
Oh, right. Because my health my issues. I mean, you are just, we're in different worlds, basically. How are you feeling anyway?
Yeah, pretty good actually. Not too bad. There's a bit of downtime. It lessens the stress actually. So every cloud has a silver lining. But there you go.
That's great. So I was, as I like to tell people, I was born sick, pretty much. I have I have a poor muscle tone, which caused a variety of different health problems when I was younger, which I have pretty much managed now. But it does create this kind of self-obsession with health and my own body. So, yeah. So I was able to deal with the anxiety and manage it, hopefully effectively.
It's interesting. There's an awful lot of psychology involved in the body and physiology that people who are, I don't know if this is the correct term, but neurotypical, but I don't mean neuro because you're not neurotypical, but people who are different from me, right? Let's just keep it that, right? So I don't have body issues and a lot of psychology involved in my body. But the range of psychologies and pathologies and all these ologies involved in every aspect of the body is fascinating and incredibly wide-ranging, right? Everything from what you experience to, body dysmorphia to all these kind of weird and wonderful and very wide-ranging things, right?
Right. I have to ask you something. Is it really body dysmorphia if there's something really wrong with you? That's a joke, by the way.
Right. Okay. I had to work it out, mate, and I so that's okay. I don't know how to answer that.
Well, I can answer that because having done working in the psychology field and having taken legitimate classes, and I have my undergraduate and did some graduate work in psychology. It's all about whether or not your behavior is maladaptive, if your thoughts, feelings, behavior are maladaptive or not. So I would say under 99.9% of the time, all of that stuff is not maladaptive for me. So I think I have as healthy as possible look at my own body and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Let's do a bit of psychoanalysis, right? Because why not? We're in lockdown. So when you're feeling hypochondriac, when you are worrying about health issues, what do you think the function of that is for you?
Well, a lot of that is self-care. When you think about how a lot of maladaptive behavior is just a way of soothing yourself, right? Of a person trying to manage the anxiety or what they're feeling. I think that's going on is that there's like a little bell ringing in the back of my head that there is something wrong, and I am trying to find ways of managing not the symptoms, but also the underlying anxiety, I think, if I was going to do a Psycho 101 on me.
Right. Good. Oh, this could open a whole can of worms, right? Let's have an hour of properly unsolicited psychoanalysis. But yeah, I suppose these things often come down to underlying anxieties, right? And so unpicking them is about finding the foundation, burrowing down to those issues that underlie the manifestations of those issues, right? So
right. Yeah.
So coronavirus for you must be a whole bundle of fun.
Well, we were just talking about the asymptomaticness of it. It's like, oh my God, that's as if you're in the zombie apocalypse, but you don't know who's a zombie.
Yeah. So the whole kind of, have I got it? Haven't I got it? But if I've got it, am I giving it to someone else? Is it what? Yeah.
Exactly. And we live two very different lives, because I know you're a teacher, you're surrounded by people all the time. When I'm at work, I work during the overnights. I don't interact with a lot of people. If you follow me on Facebook, which I know you do, you might see some of my pictures of some walks I do. Graveyard. There's a great graveyard in Cambridge, Massachusetts, called Mount Auburn Graveyard, Mount Auburn Cemetery, one of the oldest cemeteries in the United States. It's a beautiful place. But yeah, so I spend a lot of my time under normal circumstances not being around a lot of people. And so I think that in a weird way has helped me kind of manage my own underlying health anxiety during this time.
Right. There was a really good, I put up something recently saying, which is a quote from the Scottish leader, Nicola Sturgeon, who seems to be saying a lot of sensible things at the moment. She said something like, if you haven't changed your behavior, you're not doing things right. And I thought, that's really good, right? I can get that. Like if I'm just carrying on life as normal, then I'm doing wrong. And then someone put, but what if you're a recluse, like that doesn't like interacting with anyone? I'm like, okay, yeah. Very good.
I would say the biggest behavior change I've done is washing my hands more.
Right. Should you say even more? I don't know.
Even more. Exactly. Well, I'm 51 years old, so my developmental stage of me not washing my hands, which is basically up until the age of 21, I think that's typical for dudes. I'm now firmly in the I wash my hands on the regular, but now because of the virus, I wash them even more, and I wash them correctly by the WHO guidelines.
Yes. I saw a really good viral video of someone with some gloves on and got some black ink, and then showed you washing your hands really crappily and then washing them properly, and you can see the coverage that happens when you do it properly. And it's like, that's a really good way of doing that. So you say you're from Massachusetts, which means you're Elizabeth Warren country. Is that right?
I am in Elizabeth Warren country. That's right. We are the most bluest state in the union. I like to call us the Norway of America.
So you are the neurotypical of America, right?
We are. I was in Texas over the holidays. My girlfriend is from Texas, and I lived through it.
So it's interesting. So I was, as a Brit, completely irrelevant, but in the Democratic primaries, as far as I've got, I was a supporter of Elizabeth Warren. Was absolutely gutted when she didn't make the cut, and she clearly deserved to make the cut. I know that she has a lot of detractors, but she, every time I see her interviewed, I mean every time, right? 100% of her performances, both in any public sphere, she nails it. She nails it on like comedy chat shows, whether she's with Stephen Colbert or Seth Meyers or whatever, she absolutely is awesome. And then when she's interviewed, say by CNN, she nails it. And when she's in debate, she's always solid. And her policies are broadly really pretty damn good. And she's a really she's a really great female role model, and all these things going for her, and then she just didn't come anywhere close in the end, and it was a massive it's such an opportunity missed, I think, for the Democratic Party and for America. And I really, and now when I see her talk, I'm like, no, you are so good. You're saying you're nailing this on the coronavirus. You're nailing this on this. Why didn't America wake up to you? I don't know.
Oh my fictitious God, there are so many reasons. All right, if you're going to graph it out, all those positive traits that you have just stated, they are negatively correlated to electoral success here.
Yeah.
For the chief executive of the United States of America.
Yeah.
So after your qualifications. Yeah. It's she would crush any election in the Nordic countries, my friend. Denmark.
Yeah, good point.
Norway, Sweden. She would be right in there. She would, not even a problem. And people would just say, hey, she's just a great candidate. Why wouldn't we vote her in? Right. Yeah. But it is a different world here in the States, let me tell you.
And you even got a lot of haters for her in say either the Biden or the Sanders camp as well. So a lot of people think she's a snake, think she does a lot of lying, and I don't see it like that. I do see where that's come from, and I do understand that. But compared to every Republican candidate you can name, it's just not even close. For me, it was, as a progressive, it was Sanders or Warren, but I preferred Warren as being a more realistic person who would probably go slightly towards the middle, but not greatly, but draw, I think, more broadly than Sanders. I think Sanders was even more divisive, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't know why she attracted so many detractors from both sides. Well, I do know, really. That's me being
right. Sure. You know, you can think of it as like an American Idol competition here, right? In terms of our presidential candidates, and there is just so many of the progressive vote within the Democratic Party that's going to go around.
Yeah.
And Sanders has been doing this bit for, I don't even know how long, 50 years. And I'm not the first one to say it. He's got a hardcore group of people who really like what he has to say. And I think that just sucked the air out of a lot of what Elizabeth and her supporters, just sucked a lot out of it.
He's actually dropped down on the 2016 numbers as well. So, Biden seems to have gained on him in a way that I really wasn't expecting, and that's a massive shame. And actually, interestingly, I know that it's not a time to make political capital now, but I think in a time of a pandemic where you're advocating universal healthcare, Sanders should be absolutely nailing it now. And it would be a bit opportunistic to see him come out and kind of do that. I understand that, but really, if there's when you hear a story today of a kid getting refused healthcare for having COVID complications and getting turned away from emergency care and dying, you think, man, that sucks. That would never happen in Britain. It's just nuts.
Right. I have two thoughts on that. One, and this is like, there's a really dark point, and then there's a not so dark point. I'm going to go with a really dark point first. There would have to be,
as I said, start low and then marginally climb.
There would have to be a lot more dead bodies for people to really embrace Medicare for all, universal health care in a real way here in the States. It's unfortunate, but I
You
think
know
it's
what?
true.
I agree. So when I was thinking about this earlier, and I was talking about it to my partner and saying this in my head, I was like, one person getting refused at one hospital ain't going to change jack. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and the other thing is that when people feel let me back up a little bit. I don't know if you ever watch boxing or mixed martial arts. I will watch mixed martial arts every once in a while. And what happens when a fighter is not doing well? They become more conservative. So if your main strength is wrestling, for example, you will want to wrestle more. If you're a boxer, you may want to box more, even though that is not the best choice for you at the time. So I think that when a society is more under pressure, like we are right now, we are typically going to become more conservative.
100% agree with you. I've written on this actually in a couple of blog posts recently. I absolutely. So here's how I'd explain what you've just said. So
Sure.
Taking into account Maslow's hierarchy of needs, are you aware of that, where you start your physiological needs and then you work up to self-actualization. So back in 2007, just before the crash, right, everyone was buying organic and fair trade and all this kind of like, let's be up here and think about other people out there in the world as a whole, and isn't the world wonderful, and we can do all this good stuff. And as soon as the economic crash hit and everyone moved back down that hierarchy of needs, where they're like, right, I've got no money, I'm back down here, I need to make sure I've got a house, a mortgage. You move back down that pyramid until you get to, until so that you start only thinking about yourself or your immediate family or people like you, and it's the luxury of being up here means you have economic safety and welfare and all these things and security that then allow you to think about others.
Right.
And so if you think about that on an individual level, that's exactly the same for a country or a society. So right now, where we're literally having our physiological existence is challenged, right? You are right back down at the very bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and therefore you don't have the luxury of thinking about other people, so you are naturally going to be conservative in group, thinking about your own. You will go to the shop and you will buy the whole place out of toilet rolls like some selfish bastard, because it's all about you. If I don't exist, nothing else matters. So therefore, it's about me. So I fully understand that, and I totally agree with you. Yeah, the whole world. This is a fascist, nationalistic, populist dream, because they should be making a lot of political capital out of this.
So when we think about the Democratic, election, the Democratic Party, nominees, Biden is actually a result of that. People know Biden. They're afraid. If people are going to vote for Sanders over Biden, they'd have to be more angry over afraid. And they're not more angry than afraid.
And I'd agree. Yeah, that's a good point. And if he could really sell it on the Medicare, I think that's his only option is in a health crisis, go health. I think that's his unique selling point. But I broadly agree that a safe pair of hands, even though he's got declining mental capacities, Biden, but he's deemed a safe pair of hands, falsely so. So therefore, this will play into his campaign.
I am concerned that the Democrats are going to be able to snatch victory from or snap defeat from the jaws of victory. That's the saying, right? In the fact that there is a major recession going on here, even though it's not official. I think there has to be 2 quarters.
If you don't get a recession out of this, gee whiz, like that.
Yeah, exactly. So there's been no president in modern times that has won re-election during recession.
It depends how much. So I was going to speak to you about predictions for November, but it depends how he sells it. If he can really slope his shoulder scapegoat coronavirus, he's got a chance.
Right.
And any other previous recession would have been more, unless it's a war, would have been more a result of economic things that you can hang better on an individual government. So I don't know.
Right.
But you're right. Yeah.
So my concern, of course, with the Democrats is that they don't have someone in Joe Biden who wakes up every morning wanting it, who really, and if he does want it, then he doesn't have the tools to get it.
He doesn't have that. Bernie Sanders. I can't do an impression, but
yeah, he doesn't have it. And I think Sanders, he may not wake up every day wanting to be the president of the United States, but he wakes up every day wanting to change America.
And did you see his speech about Republicans complaining about certain people could take advantage and get $600 more in welfare payments if this thing goes through and whatever? And mate, you've got to Google that. Sanders,
I'll take a look.
He was on fire. But yeah, you're right. That kind of fire in your belly, political will to make things better, especially for everyone.
And to tell you the truth, it isn't just the fact that I'm concerned about Biden, but in terms of like getting back to the boxing fighting analogy, I don't think he matches up well against Trump at all. I think Trump is gonna harass him. Trump and his minions are going to harass Biden enough so that Biden either cries on stage during a debate or he's going to take a swing at Trump.
What do you mean? Do you mean actually physically cry?
Yeah, like physically cry or physically like take a swing at him.
I'd love to see that, but okay, fair enough. Because I do worry about Biden, Trump a lot, because a large proportion of the more vocal Democrats, as in the younger, more tech savvy, social media savvy Democrats, aren't going to have the fire in their belly for Biden, and so they aren't going to be getting out and shouting for him. Yeah, and I think it's a kind of resigned to the lesser of two evils, or well, it's a Democrat, so any Democrat's better than a Republican type thing, rather than being pro-Biden.
My friend, I think you're one of the few people that I talk to that would understand the Maginot Line analogy I have for the blue wall. Because remember, back in 2016, the Democrats were talking about this blue wall strategy that we're going to stop Trump, and it's just going to be, and I compare it to the Maginot Line in World War II with the French versus the Germans, right? And we all know how well that ended up, 6 weeks later, and Hillary Clinton is basically defeated by Hitler, right?
Yeah.
And I'm mixing my currents there. But when I look at Joe Biden, I'm wondering whether or not this kind of complacency, this blue wall strategy too, because he doesn't have kind of like the fire in the belly or in the heart.
I think that's an interesting word, complacency. I wonder if there is. I wonder what people actually feel in, say, the Biden camp, or with Democrats or the DNC or wherever, like actually feel about the chances really against Trump, given that Trump has that absolutely rabid cultist, following that you're never going to budge. You ain't going to budge it. So it is about the small swing voters, and the chances of nicking the swing voters are good.
You in any other election, because of the recession, it should be an easy, and I'm going to say it should be an easy win. I had Professor Alan Lichtman, who did the 13 Keys way of predicting how people elect presidents here in the United States, and an economic recession, like feeling the recession. So there is the actually having a recession and people feeling it. But if people feel that recession, it's very unlikely Trump would become president. But Trump is good at two things, and that is branding. He's really good at branding things. That's lying. Okay, you can call that lying. Sure, we'll say it that way. But branding, and also at winning elections. Now, you may say he cheats at elections, and that's fine. You can say that too. But he still wins at them. And
that's where it gets a little bit funky, because he won the Electoral College and he won in the right place, and he didn't win the popular vote. So how does that play out when he might have solidified his core base, but he hasn't solidified a swing vote? And although his his approval ratings have gone up since coronavirus has started, that's going to be a natural thing that you see around the world, especially with nationalistic rulers. You always do well in a war, in a whatever, something that brings society together to face a common foe. You will always stand behind your leader. So he will get that. If that drops off, that's going to be, for me, that's the key, right? Because that's the swing voters coming back to Trump, to push that up to the post-50s approval. And if he can maintain that, it's going to be a challenge. But if that's transient, then he's possibly in trouble. But it depends. But it's the Electoral College, so it depends where those votes come.
I put a doomsday scenario situation as an electoral map. You know how you can go online and pick which states go red, which states go blue. And there's a very real chance of the Electoral College actually being tied. I think it's like 269, 269. And in that case, Trump wins too. So Trump can win the election by a tie.
So it's a roulette zero. Yeah.
So, I think it's really important for the Democrats, once again, is to make sure that they are not complacent and telling people that just because we won the House last time doesn't mean we're going to win this time.
This is why it's about voter turnout. It's about energizing the electorate. It's about the core, the disenfranchised voters, the black voters of certain areas, the gerrymandering, the victims of gerrymandering, all these kind of things where you've got to somehow make that work. And that's a lot of effort. So that, let's hope that Bloomberg's 12 million actually comes in handy, or billion or whatever.
I think that, and we both know this innately, that the right has churches, right? They have churches just spewing out this kind of propaganda Sunday, Monday, all week long. It isn't just on Sundays. And people on the left really don't have anything to counter.
Yeah, absolutely true. And I think, that's that is a challenge. I mean, you just got to hope that as the WASP, the use of white Anglo-Saxon Protestant demographic, it becomes less and less prevalent, that you've got chances for those other demographics to take their chance, right? To take their opportunity. Sorry, I had to turn the plug on. Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you why I understand this particular theory is that we just have to wait for us white people to go, right? And I'm going to tell you why I think that is a really disturbing strategy. And one of them is that vocalized small groups of well-funded people dominate countries.
Yeah.
You can say that in Iran.
Yeah.
You can say that in Bolshevik Russia. You can say that how the Tea Party took over the Republicans, or how Trumpism took over the Republican Party. So even if you only have a small percentage, I mean, how many Sunnis were there in Iraq? They were an ethnic minority too, but yet they were still able to dominate that nation. My concern is this idea that we just have to wait for white people to become a super minority. That is a dangerous.
I'd agree. I think you need much. That's why I was trying to mention lots of other things. It's the perfect storm of, you need everything to work together to bring forth at least a clear democratic victory. And those environmental factors of how is the economy. So when you're talking about 3.3 million people joining the unemployment queue, in the last week or whatever it is in America, you got this weird scenario where the Democratic Party are probably going, please, let's have more unemployment. Where you're like, they're almost wishing ill on the country potentially. I don't know, in order that the right context is set out for them to win, more
sure.
to win.
Well, you know, Trump went out of his way to try to keep the economy doing well. He had the Fed cut the rates when he probably shouldn't have, like months ago, before COVID-19 happened, and that was just to keep the economy going well. Of course, when the Fed cuts rates so much, they don't have that many. They don't have that tool when things go really wrong, like during the crisis.
Yeah.
This COVID-19. So you can cut rates to like zero, and it's not, which they're pretty much at, and that's not going to help.
Yeah, it's exactly the same here. They cut them pretty low, and it didn't really have the desired effect. And then they had to go to 0.1%, and it's like, well, it's really going to have a negligible further effect. And so, yeah. So what's interesting, I just mentioned this in a video I've just done, a solo video I've just done, whereby actually with coronavirus, if you want everyone to be screwed, so you want the whole world and everyone in your country to be equally screwed by this, because wealth is relative. And so therefore, if say, I don't know, a particular group of this society was screwed, but everyone else is fine, then they're the ones that are going to do fine, and I'm just going to be screwed, and we're not in this together, and it means that I'm going to be downtrodden now going forward. I'm going to lose my house, I'm going to lose this. Whereas if everyone is screwed in my country, then the government is going to say, right, everyone's screwed. No one has to pay their mortgage for the next 2 months. We're going to help you all equally. And so if everyone's in this together, you have a safety by numbers scenario whereby actually that means we're all right. If we're all screwed, we're all right. And that's works, I think, for a whole country, but the whole world. You almost want the whole world to get coronavirus. And I say that with loads of caveats, you know what I mean, but very abstractly, if you want the whole world to be screwed over, because that means no one's screwed over.
Yeah, I've read, and I forget which periodical it was. It might have been in the Times. It might have been and it could have been on NPR that I heard about this. Is that after crises like this, then troubles, hotspots around the country, around the world, do cool off. You know, if there are conflicts going on before the crisis, they have a tendency of getting resolved or ameliorated. So there is some truth to that. You know, I don't know. Did you ever read or watch the, or did you read the Watchmen? Watchmen series of comics back in the 80s?
I read the graphic novel of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I did when I was a teenager.
Okay, so basically, I believe that was taken from a Twilight Zone story, but the basic, and I'm not gonna, you know, the movie's been out there for a while, the graphic novel's been out there for decades. Basically, one of the characters organizes this global catastrophe to basically make people behave themselves, because the world was close to nuclear war, everything was falling apart, and one of the quote-unquote heroes figured out that I'm just going to have to do something about this, and it's not going to be very heroic. In fact, it may be villainous. So I think
I've often said that the only way to bring the world together is to have a common enemy. And I wrote a blog post years ago about how the best thing to bring the world together would be an alien invasion, where everyone is working towards a common enemy. But this is quite similar to that. So where the enemy knows no national boundaries, it's effectively synonymous with an alien, and so therefore this has the ability, the propensity to bring the world together in a way that nothing else could have done in any kind of strategic governmental sense. You know. Yeah,
I think a virus is about as close as you can get to an alien, right? It's not alive, it's not really dead.
Yeah.
It can mutate on the fly.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out, you know. And obviously we're talking in a very abstract sense here, and there will be a huge amount of loss and death and sadness for a lot of people. What's quite interesting, I've done a lot of debating on my blog about with right-wing people, everyone on the left wing, and all the atheist, skeptic, scientific-minded people are generally in agreement, which is follow the evidence, make policies that are informed by the evidence, and then that's the best sort of thing. And then I get some absolute wingnuts just arguing just nonsense. and the classic talking points of it's like the flu. The flu's killed 30,000 people this year already. The coronavirus has killed a handful in comparison. Why are we stopping the economy and blah blah blah? And it's like, oh my goodness, right? Do I have to spell this out for you? Do some reading. Okay, it's more infectious. It has a higher mortality rate. So if we don't do these things, then this will kill 8 million Americans or whatever the number.
Oh yeah.
Right. So you puts that 30,000 to bed or whatever your figure is. So you get this situation where let's assume that America comes to an economic standstill, and say only 20,000 people die. Right. So you get these same people that end up going, we've had to put 2.2 trillion in. We've got an economic recession. We had a isolation. People have stood still. Blah 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 blah. This has gone on, and only 20,000 people have died. What a waste of! Oh my god! It's like you've got it the wrong way round. If we hadn't have done that, you would have had 8 million die. So that was what caused only 20,000 people to die. You've got. You got it wrong.
Well, what you've touched on is something. I was talking about it with somebody else. I think I was on the Daily Atheist show, which I've been doing on Tuesdays on YouTube. By the way, see, that's a plug right there, my friend.
Yeah, I caught it.
I mentioned to our guest that the way how Trump thinks that, let's say that we do nothing and a bunch of people die. Well, he'll just lie about it. You won't even blink an eye. He'll just lie about it and blame China or the Mexicans or something, and then try to keep the economy going. And then when more people die, he'll just lie about it again. So his entire strategy about this is just lie as much as possible. And when people do catch up with him in terms of the medical institution saying, he will get away with as much as possible and just lie about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's, do you know what? That happens in every context, so that's a gimme. Yeah, for sure. Something good happens, Trump lies about it. Something bad happens, Trump lies about it. Something in the middle happens, Trump lies about it. Trump leans over to the left on a Tuesday, Trump lies about it. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, you're actually right. It's yeah. I don't know. It's what's interesting is how the media that he has in his pocket, so the state media that you have that is Fox News, was all like, oh, it's a hoax, it's this, it's that, kind of belittling all those who are worried about the virus. And then when you reach this tipping point and Trump had to admit that it was an issue, then Fox, like the little lapdogs they are, followed suit and changed their tunes completely. And it's like, it's just like looking at Trump's tweet timelines on anything. Something he tweeted in 2012 comes back to bite him on the arse in 2020. But this timeline is much, truncated in the fact that he's, I don't know, it's just insane. And
people will still follow that. People will still follow the guy as long as he butters their bread in terms of giving them Supreme Court justice picks, in terms of entertaining them, even as simple as just, owning the libs, or trick people. People are still going to support him.
Yeah.
A certain, 20%. Even during the Iraq War, there was 20 to 25% of this country who supported W. Bush. Bush the younger, which is insane.
So I wonder what he would have to do to lose some of that core support. And I wonder, it would be interesting to see. Well, the demographics show that they approve, but the problem is those information sources. If you're watching solely Fox News, then you will always support Trump. There is no way of even knowing. I've read so many comments and things people have said whereby they've spoken to relatives who are dyed-in-the-wool Republican and Trump supporters who didn't even know of the most basic of facts about Trump screwing up this or saying this or doing that, because it hadn't been reported at all on Fox News. And so therefore, why would they think that Trump was poor in any way? Because they just don't have any information contrary to their view.
When talking to a Trump supporter, I think it's important to keep in mind this basic principle that therapists have when dealing with patients, with clients. You know, you're supposed to create this kind of cognitive, emotional space for them to explore, right? To get beyond this kind of whatever kind of maladaptive thoughts and feelings that they have, and try to think about what if this is wrong, what does that mean?
Yeah,
you know, trying to open up a door of doubt, right?
but
It's like talking to a religious believer.
Which is a hallmark of a skeptic, right? And if that's not your kind of bread and butter thought process, you know, as skeptics, we always, well, I like to think, or we certainly should, like Richard Feynman says, the easy person to fool is yourself. So, you know, we should be questioning our own beliefs first and foremost before looking at other people. But any kind of received information, right, how can I prove that's wrong, or how can I know it's wrong, or how might it be wrong, or how, you know, it's always undercutting those claims. And we hope I hope that we do that to our own media sources as well. But I think conservatives appear to do that, or Trump supporters appear to do that far less, and live, yes, we live in this liberal bubble, okay, but I think that right-wing conservative bubble, that particular type of bubble, is even more bubbly.
Sure, yeah, no doubt about that. And I think that a lot of people on our side, people on the left, they go through this analysis paralysis, right? They just take so much time in analyzing a particular point that they don't understand how important it is just to talk to the other side with a smile on your face, building up relationships, and trying to muddle through. You don't let, you know, the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? And I think that's what a lot of our side does.
How to make friends and influence people is a psychological affair, and being a skeptic is a very rational and cold, hard fact affair, and they're not necessarily good bedfellows.
Yeah, and they're not. And you know, it's to live in a civil society, being able to communicate to our fellow monkeys, though distasteful at times, is a necessary skill to have.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Well, look, are there any final thoughts you have on our little coronavirus chat? Any predictions? I mean, so what are we date-wise? We're the 27th of March, so we are approaching a moment where America is becoming the epicenter of the virus.
I think we're supposed to get the worst of it within the next 2 or 3 weeks. That's what I've heard from legitimate news sources, that we're just cresting right now before we're going to be able to flatten the curve effectively. You know, people stay in, do what you're supposed to do. Don't go outside unless you have to.
My thoughts are, I had predicted actually that America would become the epicenter from a population point of view, and because it seemed to have hit a few milestones a little bit earlier than, say, India. So China. So you look at it in terms of population. So in this global world that we live in, of interconnected societies and geographical travel, you would expect your population centers to be the worst hit, obviously. And so China is going to get it. But then it seemed to flatten that curve really quickly. Now, that's an interesting
that's because they have an authoritarian government, and they can go door to door taking people's temperature.
So then it hits America before it hits India. So you think, right, America is definitely going to be the next epicenter. So I predicted that, but my prediction is that India will be a place that possibly overtakes America. So it comes down to authoritarianness, right? So if we can trust China and their stats, and if we can, let's assume we can do that for now, then they flatten that curve precisely because they won't let people leave their buildings in a kind of hardcore authoritarian manner, I gather. America's not going to be like that unless push comes to shove. I mean, Trump has the ability to be an authoritarian, right? But but the whole country of America and its idealistic ideas of liberty means that I think that would be a tough sell. But then if India goes down 1.3 billion with the variety of living arrangements you've got there and the massively densely populated cities and urban areas with and all kind of forms of communicate, like it's just that to me, and I don't want to be Westernist here, but man, that's got to be a tough gig to try and control isolation in India. So my prediction is China, yeah, America next, yeah, I've got that, and then India. I don't know.
It could be a black hole. You're right. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It doesn't have the infrastructure that, you know, a place like South Korea does, for an example, that could just test hundreds of thousands of people within a short period of time. And yeah, it could be really bad over there.
Well, yeah, but you know, America's trajectory looks pretty bleak just now. And you know, I look at a lot of these geeky graphs and see certainly the infection rates and the death rates looking to follow them. Yes, you are testing more than you were, and so therefore that will skew infection rates to look worse than maybe comparatively other countries look. But your death rates look to be following that. So actually, it's a bit of extra testing plus just shed loads of people are getting it, right? More people are getting it. You aren't really doing hardcore things. And here's a thing, and I'd be interested in your opinion on this. Part of the challenge America has is the federal nation of America. So where you've got states, where you've got Trump comes out and literally explicitly says, well, that's the fault of the governor of that state that that's not happening. That's the fault of that governor. And I've got some advice that I'm giving everyone, but it's up to the states to do this. Man, that's just a layer of complexity that you don't need. Whereas in Britain, it's like, right, everyone's doing this, end of. You're doing it, that's it.
Sure. There, of course, most people know that there's a clause in the Constitution that under national emergencies, the president can take tyrannical powers for, I believe, 6 months and basically rule by fiat. I don't think anyone wants that by any president. I don't think, especially by this president, that would just be basically destroying federalism right there and destroying personal liberty. And with Trump, it would just make the situation like 100 times.
But on the other hand, if you had a leader that I thought was worth their salt, you know, that I would want that. Do you know what I mean? If you had a benign leader that was a decent leader, I would say now's the time to take authoritarian rule following evidence-based policy.
I would say that if there was an effective leader, you wouldn't have to get to the point of you know, being an official tyrant for 6 months. I think that if you have a really effective leader, you'd be able to talk and put pressure on the states for them to do what they need to do. Because the president, you know, it's like de Tocqueville said, you know, the president has imperial powers in America. You could mess around.
You get this weird situation. So, say take ventilators, right? So in Britain, yes, you've got national health trusts who will be buying, but at the end of the day, you've got a government, central government, that is saying, right, we need to get all these ventilators, we need to do that and get them out to everyone. Whereas in America, you've got New York vying for ventilators against Illinois, against all these places. That it's almost the free market system within the states where you've got your own country vying against itself to get provisions.
Oh, it's madness. Yeah. So if there was real leadership, then that would be different. But unfortunately, Trump is anything but real leadership.
Yes.
And you know, I mean, it's a disturbing incentive for, you know, the ruling class, for the oligarchs here in America, right? I mean, if you have more chaos, people are less likely to trust the central government. People are less likely to trust the central government, then they're more likely to trust you and your billion-dollar company when you swoop in and do all the right things and to help people out. You know, it's a toxic kind of incentive system, positive feedback loop. And one of the things that, you know, helped, you know, destroy the Roman state, you know, if the central state stops being productive, then there will be individual landowners or property owners or like I said, oligarchs who will give shelter to the people. And what you boil down to is feudalism. This kind of weird feudalistic. Now you may say that sounds crazy, Andy Hall, right? But that's the way that we're heading.
Well, yeah, I mean, I see that. It doesn't sound crazy. I see that in elements throughout your federal system and the way it's operating now. In the, you know, and you have those feudal lords, Cuomo or Inslee or whoever, you know, fighting for their neck of the woods and having to appeal to the ruler king in order to get a fair cut of the cake or whatever it is, and it just seems an unnecessary layer of challenge in order to deal with your crisis.
And this is what I've told a lot of my moderate friends, and it doesn't go over very well with some of them, is that, you know, America is either going to be like Venezuela or it's going to be like Norway. It is one of those two things. It has so many internal contradictions, and you can see them pushing and pulling against each other. It's either, we're either going to be or drop closer to a third world country, to a Venezuela, or we're going to put on our big boy and girl pants and become more like Norway. There's no middle ground in this.
Yeah, and it's funny how I wrote a blog piece on libertarianism, how it's not a good time to be a libertarian, because when you're in a crisis, you need central strategic planning, which the free market literally cannot do, like by definition. And so therefore, this kind of scenario favors, as we've touched on, authoritarian leaders, or certainly strong centralized strategic planning. And I wonder whether this would kickstart a movement towards that in America in maybe a beneficial way. I don't know.
It may be. You're totally right. It could be a beneficial thing in the long run.
Yeah. Hey ho. Well, lots to think on there, Andrew. Anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people check you out? Like, well, not naked or anything, just like.
Oh, I understand. I run this little comedy blog called Laughing in Disbelief on Pathos.
Awesome.
I run a YouTube channel called Laughing in Disbelief also. I do a whole bunch of things on that channel, good things and funny things. And of course, like I mentioned before, I've been doing Tuesday mornings on the Daily Atheist show. Daily Atheist show, you can find that on YouTube. And I'm there Tuesday mornings, 9 Eastern till 10 Eastern or so.
Is that your own thing?
That's my buddy Chris Mallard. Now, you may find that that's funny that I'm working with someone whose last name is Mallard when all of my pseudonyms are Kennard, right? Nice. So it's basically Mallard and Kennard.
Nice.
So yeah, it's just by fate that he reached out to me and wanted to co-host on Tuesdays, and I said, sure, I can co-host.
Birds of a feather flock together, right?
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
You see what I did there?
Oh, I saw what you did. Very clever.
Yeah,
very clever.
Very good. Well, look, I'll put the details to your stuff down in the detail section. Yeah, take it easy. Thank you very much for being a part of this conversation.
Always a pleasure talking with you, man.
And you. Cheers, dude.